10 people. Just 10. 10 people own more wealth than the bottom 3.1 billion humans combined. That's not a typo. 10 versus 3 billion, 100 million. If you stacked $1 bills to represent the net worth of Elon Musk alone, that stack would reach the moon and back. For times. This video is not about jealousy. It's about math. About how the rules of money were written and who wrote them. Let's start with the facts. According to the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report, the richest 1% of humanity owns 45% of all private wealth on Earth. Every house, every company, every stock portfolio, every yacht. The bottom 50%, 3.9 billion people, share just 2.3%. Think about that for a second. Half the human species fighting over 2% of the pie. The top 1% holds the equivalent of $201 trillion. The bottom half together hold 10 trillion. That's a 20-to-1 ratio. And it's getting worse every single year. In March 2020, the world locked down. Millions lost their jobs. Restaurants closed. Airlines collapsed. Entire industries disappeared overnight. And the 10 richest men on Earth doubled their wealth. From $700 billion to $1.5 trillion in less than 2 years. A new billionaire was created every 30 hours during the pandemic. Every 30 hours. Meanwhile, 1 million people fell into extreme poverty every 33 hours. The pandemic didn't create inequality. It accelerated it, like rocket fuel poured onto a fire that was already burning. French economist Thomas Piketty spent 20 years studying wealth data going back to the 18th century. His conclusion was simple and devastating. When the return on capital is greater than economic growth, when your money makes money faster than workers create new wealth, inequality compounds like interest. Exponentially. Historically, capital returns about 5% per year. Economic growth averages around 2%. That 3% gap doesn't sound like much. But over decades, it means the people who own things, stocks, property, businesses, get richer automatically. While the people who work, who only have their labor to sell, fall further behind. It's not about working harder. It's about which rules you're playing by. In 1960, the top income tax rate in the United States was 91%. 91. That means if you earned $1 million, you paid $910,000 in taxes. And yet, this was the era of America's greatest economic boom. The middle class exploded. Home ownership hit record highs. Universities were almost free. Then, over the following 60 years, that rate was cut. And cut. And cut again. Today it's 37%. And that's just the stated rate. In practice, America's billionaires pay around 8%. Less than a schoolteacher. Less than a nurse. How? Through legal mechanisms. Capital gains taxed at lower rates than income, offshore accounts, charitable foundations, carried interest loopholes. Amazon, one of the most profitable companies in history, paid $0 in federal income taxes in 2017. Zero. And it was completely legal. In 1978, the average American CEO earned 30 times more than the typical worker. 30 times. That ratio felt large. But by 2023, according to the Economic Policy Institute, the ratio had grown to 344 to 1. 344. If a worker earns $50,000 a year, their CEO earns $17 million. The worker's salary grew with inflation, slowly. The CEO's compensation exploded, stock options, performance bonuses, golden parachutes. The work at the top didn't become 300 times harder. The rules changed. There's another factor no one likes to talk about. Inheritance. Research from the Paris School of Economics shows that inherited wealth accounts for 50 to 60% of all wealth accumulation in Western societies. The American dream says anyone can make it if they work hard enough. But data tells a different story. If you were born in the bottom 20% of the income distribution, you have less than a 10% chance of reaching the top 20% in your lifetime. If you were born in the top 20%, you have a 60% chance of staying there. The game isn't rigged. The starting positions are. This isn't an American problem. The Gini coefficient, the standard measure of inequality, has increased in 71% of countries since 1990. In China, rapid economic growth lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty. But it also created a new class of ultra-billionaires. The richest 1% of Chinese now hold 30% of the country's wealth. In India, the story is sharper still. Mukesh Ambani's net worth grew by more than $50 billion during the pandemic. His monthly income exceeds what the average Indian worker earns in 10 lifetimes. Oxfam calculated something remarkable. If governments imposed a 5% wealth tax on fortunes above $1 billion, just 5%, they would raise $1.7 trillion every single year. Enough to end extreme poverty twice over. enough to provide universal health care for every low-income country on Earth. Countries like Norway and Denmark have maintained lower inequality through strong unions, free universities, and progressive taxation. Their middle classes are larger. Their social mobility is higher. Their citizens report higher happiness levels. This is an ideology. It's data. The question isn't whether the wealth gap can be fixed. The question is whether those who benefit from it will ever allow it to be. The wealth gap isn't a natural phenomenon. It isn't inevitable. It is the result of specific policies, specific tax codes, specific decisions made by specific people who benefited from them. Understanding this doesn't make you radical. It makes you informed. If you found this valuable, subscribe. Because the next video in this series is about the other side of this equation, the mechanisms used to hide this wealth. Offshore accounts, shell companies, and the secret financial system that operates above the law.